Hey, picture perfect people, it is Katie back with you today to break into these fall lawn topics that we've been so excited for as we move finally away from aeration seeding as we're finishing that up in the next few weeks. So what I want to really kick things off with is something that I hope hasn't been a conversation or a schedule that you've set yet because it's too early for this, and that is winterizing your irrigation system. We're only a week or so into fall, so why are we talking about a winter service, right? I'm gonna break down for you exactly what winterizing an irrigation system is, why it's done, when it's supposed to be done, and when for some reason some people think that it could be done or needs to be done or has no risk of causing other issues by being done. So I'm gonna break that all down for you. Be sure to comment below and subscribe if you haven't done so already. I'll give you like 8 seconds to do that while we play this intro clip. So, did you do it? Did you subscribe? I hope so, because I'm about to hit you with a lot of great information about winterizing your irrigation system, and later this month I'm going to hit you with a lot of other great information about other important parts of the fall, like leaves and crazy stuff like that. Now, before I get into it, just go ahead and comment below and let me know if you have an in-ground irrigation system and if you're in an area where that has to be winterized. I'm originally from the Atlanta area and I had never heard of winterizing an irrigation system. That's not really something that anybody had to do because soil temperatures don't reach freezing nearly that often and it's kind of a non-issue. But up here in the Richmond area, it's a standard. It's what everybody has to do every year. So comment below. Let me know if you winterize your irrigation system, and if you do, when do you have to have it done? In case you didn't know, winterizing an irrigation system is done so that during the winter, when we hit freezing temperatures, the backflow on the system as well as the pipes that are in the ground don't freeze with water inside of them and as a result rupture and break and cause all kinds of problems. That's the whole purpose. It's a preventative measure to reduce the chance of there being any issues the following season when you turn your system back on. Now, here's the thing. This means that winterizing an irrigation system is basically turning your irrigation off. Once it's done, it can't be undone until you're ready to turn it back on in the spring, because the process of winterizing an irrigation system typically involves using pressurized air to blow out all of the water that is sitting in those pipes between times that you're running the water. So that water that sits in the pipes after you've run your system until you're ready to run it again and keeps it from all the air that's coming out as it leads to that water is what can cause damage during the winter if it were to freeze. Here comes 8th grade science class. Water expands when it freezes. It grows, and that's why you can't just stick a brand new bottle of water in the freezer and freeze it. You're going to rupture that plastic. It's the same thing with your pipes. Water expands when it freezes. It's what makes life possible on Earth. It's pretty cool science. Geology's neat. You should learn about it.
Rocks! Rock! Rocks! Rock!
But in this situation, it can be an issue because that's going to cause all those ruptured pipes. So we blow it out, replace it with air, and that's a non-event. No big deal, but that's why you can't turn it back on until spring, because then you're just putting water back into it and you're right back where you started. Now, in case you didn't pick up on this from all the videos that we've done this summer about heat stress and fungus and how to take care of your seed after it's put down in the fall, all these videos that we've been talking about with how fescue hates the summer and it needs water to grow, and this is how you should water, and this is how you should water your seed. It's an important process. It's really, really important, especially this year when it's been so hot and dry, to keep your grass watered for as long as it's growing. And that's where it gets tricky, because a lot of the time your grass is going to keep growing well into November. And a lot of the time irrigation companies are wanting to blow out your system back in like now. This is when I'm going to try not to lose friends, so bear with me. I'm not saying that irrigation companies are doing anything wrong by encouraging some of their clients to go ahead and winterize their irrigation system at the beginning of the fall. However, the vast majority of the time, they're not recommending winterizing your irrigation system in September or October because that's the best thing for your lawn. They're recommending it because if everybody were to do it at the right time, They might not all get done. I get that. Trust me, I get that. And I hope that you get that too, because in any kind of service industry, you have to have a window of time to complete certain services. And you can't get all of your clients serviced at the exact same ideal moment. Somebody's got to go first. So I'm not fighting with my irrigation friends in terms of when clients should have their irrigation system blown out. I'm just saying that for picture perfect clients and in an ideal situation where you have some pull over when your irrigation system gets winterized, you don't want to jump on the earliest availability even when it comes with a 20% off if you winterize in October. So you heard me say earlier that fescue really should be watered for as long as it's wanting to grow. And that's true. I wasn't making that up. Typically that growing period in the Richmond area is from late March, early April into November. Most years that's how it averages out. Sometimes it can start as early as February and it can go as late as December. But it really depends on air temperatures, soil temperatures, and everything else. This relates to your seed as well. We always recommend watering your baby grass on that high frequency, low duration schedule for at least 4 weeks so that it's able to germinate and develop successfully. So if you have your seed put down in mid-October, which is an ideal part of that seeding window like we've talked about, you're going to need to keep watering it at least until early to mid-November. So here's my advice. Here is my urgent request. Do not ever winterize your irrigation system in September. There's no reason for that. It shouldn't even be a conversation. Please, if at all possible, do not winterize your irrigation system in October. This isn't as big of a problem as September, since typically in October we're starting to get into cooler temperatures and everything, but it still is not ideal unless you had your seed put down and it's all germinated back at the beginning of September. On average, and it really depends on the weather, but on average, we recommend waiting until around Thanksgiving to winterize your irrigation system. I know, shock and panic, but isn't that so late? Aren't my pipes going to freeze? We have frosts at the end of October. It's not the same thing, so don't worry. Let's explain how that works. In the Richmond area, and keep in mind, this is advice for the Richmond area, so if you're up in Minnesota, you probably should have winterized your system in July. But in the Richmond area, we get our first frosts typically at the very end of October, but it's not until well into November and even December that we even start to hit a low that hits freezing. That being said, just because we hit a low temperature of 32 does not mean that everything in your yard is going to freeze. That's not how it works either. For a backflow, air temperatures and wind shear have to be at a consistently freezing temperature for a prolonged period, like a whole night situation, to freeze the water inside of those pipes. So backflows are your first at-risk zone because they're above the ground and they've got that wind shear and everything else, and they're more vulnerable to air exposure. But all you have to do in that situation is wrap a blanket around it. Honestly, the same way that you would a Mediterranean bush in your yard, just wrap a blanket around it and it's going to insulate it and keep it a lot better protected if it's anything that's a possible risk. Where your in-ground pipes are concerned and what's more of an issue in terms of winterizing and what that concern is, that's an even bigger event to really freeze those pipes. Soil temperatures change a lot more slowly than air temperatures do. You have to have a consistent average air temperature for 3 or 4 days for it to translate to the soil temperature. So your average air temperature has to be freezing or lower for several days before that is going to impact your soil temperature. And that's really important to keep in mind, because just hitting freezing one night and then going back up into the 40s for the next 5 nights, your pipes aren't going to freeze. There's not going to be any risk. Just wrap up that backflow and you'll be good to go. So we might experience freezing conditions in November, but they're not going to freeze your pipes until they've been prolonged and dragged out and significant. And like I said, I know that based on your irrigation company's schedule, it might not be possible to have your irrigation system winterized at that ideal time. But it's something to communicate with them on. You know, on a year-to-year basis, case-to-case, just see if they're able to even push you back a couple of weeks. Any little bit makes a difference, especially where that seeding and its successful development and germination is concerned. So what's the takeaway here? Don't winterize your irrigation system just yet. This October, it is still very hot. There's no rain in sight. It's been super dry all through September, so a lot of seeding that's already been done is delayed, and there's a lot of seeding still left to be done. So be patient, try to work with your irrigation company to delay at least into November. And if you have any questions about it or any concerns, feel free to reach out to us. I appreciate you guys watching. I hope everybody's lawn is looking good as we get underway in fall. Like I said, comment below and let me know what your winterizing experience with your irrigation system has been, if you've even had one. And I hope that you have a picture perfect day. We'll talk to you later.